We went to the movies a great deal in Ireland, but that day was different.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
For Pierce Brosnan, Marlon Brando was more than a Hollywood legend. He was a revelation. Watching The Godfather as a young man, Brosnan was struck not just by Brando's performance, but by the weight and stillness he brought to every frame. Brando was an inspiring actor, Brosnan has said. The Godfather still holds you in its grip to this day. That idea of commanding attention not with volume, but with presence, stayed with him. Brando's instinctive, naturalistic acting style helped shift the tide of modern screen performance, replacing theatrical posturing with psychological realism. Brosnan, trained first on the stage and later refined by television and film, would later try to emulate that inward-looking approach. He had something of the animal in him, Brosnan reflected, but it was always controlled, dangerous, but precise. That paradox fascinated him. Brando's legacy didn't just reside in the films he left behind, it lived in the actors who came after, trying to reach that same level of authenticity. That hunger for authenticity inspired Brosnan to look beyond traditional leading men and focus on actors who disappeared into their roles. The actor Brosnan mentions most often in the same breath as Brando is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Today,
state by state, you can extra.
I can't listen to this anymore.
A modern master of immersion, Day-Lewis's performances are often cited by Brosnan as some of the most magnetic he's ever seen. In particular, Brosnan has singled out There Will Be Blood as a staggering achievement, saying, "Every time he's on screen, you can't take your eyes off the guy." He wasn't just talking about Day-Lewis's intensity. What Brosnan admires is the full-body commitment, the way Day-Lewis prepares, transforms, and lives inside a role. That level of dedication, it's inspiring, Brosnan once said. He carries it in his shoulders, his walk, his voice, it's complete. As someone who came into fame through the slick world of Bond but sought substance in smaller character-driven roles, Brosnan found in Day-Lewis a benchmark of artistic seriousness. Watching actors like Day-Lewis helped Brosnan see the value in taking unexpected, riskier roles, ones that might not be commercial, but would stretch him artistically. And that, in turn, led him to a deeper appreciation of actors who could balance darkness and charisma within a single performance. Of all the modern performers Brosnan has praised, few left as vivid an impression as Javier Bardem.
It's been traveling 22 years to get here, and now it's here, and it's either heads or tails. And you have to say, Colin.
His portrayal of Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men stopped Brosnan in his tracks. "Outstanding," he said. "He haunts that film." It was the kind of performance that lingered in the mind long after the credits rolled, not because it was loud or showy, but because it felt inevitable, like a force of nature. What resonated most with Brosnan was Bardem's restraint. "He never breaks character, never tips his hand," Brosnan noted. "You're terrified of him, but you never quite understand him. That's power." Bardem's use of stillness and menace reminded Brosnan of the performances he grew up admiring, quietly explosive rather than operatic. This idea of letting the camera come to you rather than chasing it became a recurring philosophy in Brosnan's own work, particularly in more subdued dramas like The Matador and The Ghostwriter. Those experiences helped him rediscover actors who, like Bardem, chose interiority over spectacle. Raphy Fines, with his reserved delivery and classical training, represents a very different kind of power.
A thing is still a thing, no matter what you place in front of it. Big car, slow car, chauffeur-driven car, broken car. Still a car.
Brosnan has frequently mentioned The English Patient as a standout film in his eyes, not just for its romance and scale, but for the fragility Fines brought to it. "It's a beautiful film, and the soundtrack stays with you," Brosnan said, "but it's Fines who anchors it. He breaks your heart without raising his voice." Fines' subtlety appealed to Brosnan's own instincts as a performer. Coming from theatre, Brosnan has always appreciated the art of underplaying, of trusting the camera to catch the smallest shift in energy. In Fines, he saw an actor who understood silence, who understood the weight of a glance or the hesitation before a sentence. It also helped that Fines, like Brosnan, straddled both stage and screen. Watching him glide between Shakespeare and spy thrillers reinforced Brosnan's belief that range is everything. That belief would later draw him to actors whose craft was matched by a sense of elegance and wit, qualities he found in someone closer to home. When asked about actors he genuinely admires, Brosnan doesn't hesitate to praise George Clooney, not just for his screen presence, but for the way he carries himself off it.
But you see the man with the briefcase?
Yes?
That's my partner. He has a gun in there. And if you don't do exactly what I tell you, or if you give me any kind of a problem at all, I'm going to look over at my partner and he's going to shoot your Mr. Gwendon between the eyes.
He's a man of great confidence, Brosnan told People magazine. He's got great style, and he's got a generosity of spirit that I admire immensely. Clooney, who also moved between light and serious material, struck Brosnan as a kindred spirit. There was the easy charm, the sly wit, the ability to anchor a film without ever seeming to try too hard. But what Brosnan admired most was Clooney's moral compass. He stands for things, Brosnan said, and he doesn't shout about it. He just gets on with the work. In a business that often rewards artifice, Clooney's example was a reminder to Brosnan that style and substance could coexist, and that it was possible to shape one's career with a long view, not just a fast climb. This perspective helped Brosnan recognize similar traits in the rising generation, especially those he'd worked with directly. Brosnan doesn't often tip his hand when it comes to future stars, but he's made an exception for Aaron Taylor-Johnson.
I said when.
Now, today.
Can I bring someone?
Yeah, sure.
Their collaboration on The Greatest left a lasting impression. This young man came on the set and took the space, filled the space with passion and energy, Brosnan recalled. I thought, here's someone who's going to be around for a long time. That intuition may have proven correct. When speculation around the next James Bond began to swirl, Brosnan was quick to name Taylor-Johnson as a strong candidate. He's got the chops, Brosnan said, and he's got the edge.
I think he would make a very fine Bond. He was actually in one of the movies I made called The Greatest. It's a lovely film, actually. And he was so impressive then. He just had this charisma. He had this presence. And
in Brosnan's mind, Taylor-Johnson had the same hunger and gravitas he saw in younger versions of Brando or Day-Lewis. Recognizing that kind of potential came from years of watching careers rise and fall. Brosnan knew that it wasn't just about talent, it was about timing, attitude, and a certain unteachable spark. But even with all that, industry politics sometimes got in the way of the best casting decisions. For Brosnan, one of the most glaring missed opportunities in recent British film was the failure to cast Colin Salmon as James Bond.
Database ID search.
Checking the databases. We've got our first match. Satoshi Isagura, chemical expert, wanted for the Tokyo subway attack. Currently working for the insurgent force in Zaire.
Salmon, who appeared alongside Brosnan in the Bond series as MI6 officer Charles Robinson, had all the credentials: the poise, the voice, the presence. Brosnan once said bluntly, Colin Salmon would be brilliant, but they don't have the bottle. It was a rare moment of public frustration from Brosnan, who usually avoids controversy, but in this case, he made an exception. He could have done it, he told Radio Times, no doubt in my mind. Brosnan saw in Salmon a mix of grace and command that few actors could match. His support wasn't just about representation, it was about recognizing a performer who had done the work, built the credibility, and deserved the shot. That sense of fairness and merit would become a recurring theme as Brosnan aged into a more reflective phase of his career. Though he never worked with Sha Connory, Brosnan often spoke of the original Bond with reverence. He was the man who started it all, Brosnan told Entertainment Weekly. He had the swagger, the authority, and that glint in his eye.
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Mr. Bond, I suppose you wouldn't care to, raise the limit?
I have no objections.
Growing up in Ireland, Brosnan watched Connery's Bond from afar, mesmerized by the exotic locations, the gadgets, and above all, the man in the suit.
I was so enamored by Sean Connery, who I'd seen as a boy of 11 years of age in Goldfinger, and I watched him transcend to the heady heights of being Bond and creating such an iconic character.
When Brosnan finally got his own turn at the role, it was Connery's cool that he channeled. "You couldn't imitate him, but you had to honor him," Brosnan said. "Every Bond actor since has borrowed something from Sean." Connery's Bond was both a blessing and a burden. He set the standard so high that Brosnan always felt he was playing catch-up, trying to add a layer of emotion and vulnerability to the character while staying true to its origins. That tension made Brosnan especially appreciative of actors who broke the mold entirely, who carved out identities separate from their predecessors. One such actor is Ben Kingsley, whom Brosnan has referred to as a master of stillness.
You're at the Grosvenor. Your name's Roundtree. Like Smarties, like Shaft. If they give you a pull, just over here to see some friends, social visit, family, that sort of thing.
Watching Gandhi, Brosnan was struck by Kingsley's quiet power, his ability to hold the screen without theatrics. "He doesn't push it," Brosnan said. "He lets it come to him." Kingsley's disciplined approach was something Brosnan began to admire more and more as he matured. Where once he may have been drawn to flashier roles, he now found himself gravitating towards actors who conveyed dignity through restraint. In recent years, Brosnan has attempted to emulate that same control, especially in dramatic roles that called for precision rather than bluster. And through it all, what he's valued most is the integrity of the work, the sense that the best performances come from deep listening, not loud speaking. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the actors Pierce Brosnan admires most, you won't want to miss our next video about the films that shaped his career and nearly cost him the Bond role. Click the thumbnail on screen to keep watching.